The midnight slaughter. When thieves stole a baby straight from the womb. Imagine this nightmare. Most criminals kick in doors looking for cash, jewelry, electronics, or anything they can quickly sell. But on this bone-chilling November night in 1995, the monsters who crept into a quiet suburban home in Addison, Illinois weren't after any of that ordinary stuff. What they wanted was something far more horrifying. A living, unborn baby still growing inside his very pregnant mother's belly. It was 2:30 in the morning when James Edwards, exhausted from another long night shift, finally dragged his tired body through the front door. The house felt way too quiet, unnaturally silent. Then, out of nowhere, he heard the terrified, piercing cries of his 19-month-old son Jordan coming from the kitchen. As he rushed toward the sound, his bare feet suddenly hit something warm, wet, and sickeningly sticky. He looked down in horror. The entire floor was covered in thick, dark, still warm blood. The metallic stench hit him like a punch to the face. That trail of blood snaked its way across the hallway and straight into the living room. With trembling hands, James pulled back the blood-soaked blanket lying on the floor. What he saw would break any human being. His wife Debra, 8.5 months pregnant and due in just 3 days, had been brutally butchered. Her stomach was viciously sliced wide open. Her uterus hacked apart like cheap meat on a butcher's block. Their unborn son Elijah was completely gone, ripped straight out of her body. Just an empty, gaping, bloody wound where a baby should have been. The smell of fresh blood hung heavy in the air, thick enough to taste. James stood there frozen, his mind refusing to accept the grotesque reality in front of him. But the nightmare was only beginning. Fighting through pure panic, James ran upstairs, desperately shouting the names of his other children. When he flung open 10-year-old daughter Samantha's bedroom door, another wave of absolute hell slammed into him. Little Samantha lay dead under a blanket, her throat slit so deeply she never had a chance. Her eyes were still wide open, staring blankly at the ceiling. Blood had sprayed across the walls, soaked the carpet, and stained her bed. The silence in that room was heavier than death itself. Then came the part that would haunt him forever. His 8-year-old son Joshua was missing. Vanished without a trace. Wife dead. Daughter murdered. Unborn baby stolen from the womb. Only the toddler Jordan had somehow survived the initial massacre. James dropped to his knees in that blood-soaked house and called 911, screaming into the phone with a broken voice. Who the hell would do something like this to my family? Just hours earlier, this had been a normal, loving household full of laughter. Now it was a slaughterhouse. Police swarmed the scene immediately, but the killers had been disturbingly careful and professional. Not a single fingerprint, not one strand of hair, not even a footprint left behind. The media exploded with coverage. This wasn't ordinary murder. It was pure demonic evil. Headlines screamed across America for days. Thousands of tips flooded in from terrified citizens. Every single one turned out to be worthless. The case was freezing over fast. Then, just hours later, a woman named Patrice Scott made a desperate phone call to the police from a nearby town. Her voice was shaking with fear. "My friend, something is really wrong. I think she's involved in something absolutely terrible." That single phone call would crack this entire case wide open. The boy who refused to die. A terrified child exposes the monsters. Patrice Scott opened her front door that freezing winter night and froze in shock. There stood her so-called friend Jacqueline Williams, sweater drenched in fresh blood, with a terrified little boy clinging to her side. The child wasn't even wearing pants, just a thin coat in the middle of a cold Illinois night. Jacqueline launched into a ridiculous, nervous story. "My friend had an accident. I just gave birth a few hours ago. Can you watch him for one night?" Something felt horribly wrong. Patrice gently asked the boy his name. In the tiniest, trembling voice imaginable, he whispered, "I'm Joshua. The robbers are coming back. Please lock the door tight." That single sentence sent chills racing down Patrice's spine. This was the missing 8-year-old boy from the murder house just 30 minutes away. For the next 7 agonizing hours, Joshua cried almost non-stop, his small body shaking violently. When he finally calmed down enough to speak, he poured out the entire nightmare. "Mommy and my big sister are dead. 3 robbers broke in. Their names were Annette, Fettel, and Vern. My little brother is still trapped in the house. Please, somebody save him." An 8-year-old boy, traumatized beyond imagination, remembering the killer's names with perfect clarity while his entire world had just been destroyed. The courage and pain in that child's voice was absolutely heartbreaking. Those names weren't random. Annette was Jacqueline's longtime nickname. Fedel was her 22-year-old boyfriend Fedel Copy. And Vern was her cousin, 24-year-old Levon Ward. Patrice was reaching for the phone to call the police when, bam, loud knocking shattered the silence. Jacqueline had come back. Joshua dove behind the sofa in pure terror, shaking like a leaf. Jacqueline stormed in wearing a fake concerned expression and claimed the boy had mental problems and needed medicine right away. She tried to force pills down his throat. Joshua fought desperately, gagging and spitting them out. Then, with a creepy, unsettling smile, Jacqueline dropped the act completely. "He's being difficult again. Let's go to my house. I'll show you the baby I just had yesterday." Patrice knew refusing could mean her own death, so she reluctantly went along. When they arrived at Jacqueline's house, the horror reached a whole new level. Jacqueline proudly presented a newborn baby with a hastily cut umbilical cord still dangling, sloppily taped up with dirty medical tape. The metallic smell of blood still lingered in the air. Then Jacqueline dragged Patrice down into the dark, damp basement laundry room. Waiting there in the shadows was 22-year-old Fedel Copy. Without a single word of warning, Fedel grabbed a white electrical cord and wrapped it tightly around little Joshua's neck, squeezing with savage strength. The boy's eyes bulged in absolute terror as he kicked and fought for his life. His desperate choking sounds echoed through the basement. Patrice screamed and lunged forward, trying to stop the monster, but the situation had already spiraled into pure chaos. They threw the struggling child into a car and sped off for 10 miles to a quiet, deserted alley near a church. When Fedel and Jacqueline finally returned to the vehicle, Joshua was no longer with them. But their clothes, hands, and faces were covered in fresh, sticky blood. The horrifying truth was written all over them. Patrice somehow survived that night of pure evil and ran straight to the police station. Thanks to her incredible courage and quick thinking, Jacqueline and Fedel were arrested almost immediately. Soon after, the third monster, Levon Ward, was also taken into custody. And here's where the story becomes even more sickening. Levon wasn't just some random violent thug. He was Debra's ex-boyfriend and the biological father of both little Jordan and the stolen unborn baby Elijah. This pathetic excuse for a human helped murder his own ex-partner, his own daughter, and tried to kill his own son. All for his own selfish reasons. Baby theft for bragging rights. The sickest motive in true crime history. So why the hell did 3 human beings commit such an unspeakable atrocity? Why would anyone slice open a living, breathing, almost full-term pregnant woman just 3 days before her due date? The answer is as pathetic, disgusting, and infuriating as it is evil. It all traced back to Levon Ward, Debra's violent ex-boyfriend and the biological father of both little Jordan and the unborn Elijah. This guy was already a walking red flag. He had served 3 years in prison for beating up a police officer. During the 3 years he lived with Debra, he treated her like his personal punching bag. Daily verbal abuse, physical violence, the whole nightmare package. When Debra finally found the strength to leave him and build a real, loving family with James, Levon's free money train came to a screeching halt. So what was this genius's brilliant solution? To terrorize her and literally steal the baby growing inside her. Of course, Levon couldn't do it alone. He dragged in his cousin Jacqueline Williams and her boyfriend Fedel Copy. Jacqueline was desperate to have a baby. She needed one to trap Fedel because she'd already had multiple abortions and was terrified of losing him. Fedel. This clown takes the cake for the most shallow, pathetic motive in true crime history. He didn't want a child out of love or responsibility. He just wanted a cute, light-skinned baby he could show off to his friends like a shiny new status symbol. Levon wanted money. Jacqueline wanted to keep her man. Fedel wanted bragging rights. 3 selfish, empty souls came together over one innocent unborn baby. How much lower can humanity sink? On the night of the murders, while James was at work, the trio broke into the house with cold precision. They confronted Debra and little Jordan in the living room. When she bravely refused to hand over money, Fedel didn't hesitate for a second. He smashed her head, knocked her down, and then, while she was still alive and conscious, sliced her belly wide open. Warm blood gushed everywhere. Jacqueline casually cut the umbilical cord and rinsed the blood off in the kitchen sink like she was cleaning up after dinner. The sheer casual cruelty of it is almost impossible to comprehend. The horrifying noises woke up 10-year-old Samantha and 8-year-old Joshua. The children walked straight into a bloodbath. Samantha was dragged upstairs, thrown on the floor, and had her throat brutally slit. Joshua was kidnapped instead of killed immediately. Probably so they could get away before James came home. They tried to drug him with poison first, but when that didn't work fast enough, they eventually stabbed him to death in a dark alley. These cowards wiped out an entire family just so Fettel could have a trophy baby to parade around. At the trial, the evidence was overwhelming and grotesque. All three were convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to death. The jury was visibly disgusted. The courtroom echoed with the raw, broken sobs of what remained of the Edwards family. For once, it felt like real justice might actually be served. But here's the part that still boils the blood of anyone who hears this story today. In 2003, Illinois Governor George Ryan decided to play hero and commuted the death sentences of 167 inmates, including these three monsters, to life without parole. All because of his grand political statement about the death penalty. So the people who butchered a pregnant mother, murdered her children in cold blood, and stole her baby get to eat 3 meals a day, watch TV, and breathe free air behind bars while Debra, Samantha, and Joshua lie in the ground. Think about that the next time someone tells you the justice system always works. Yet somehow, even in this ocean of darkness, a small light survived. 19-month-old Jordan and the stolen baby Elijah were rescued. They were raised by loving grandparents who poured every ounce of care into them. Against all odds, both boys grew up into fine young men, carrying their family's love while trying to heal wounds most of us can't even imagine. And 8-year-old Joshua, that brave little warrior, fought until his very last breath. He tried to save his mother and baby brother with every bit of strength he had. Wherever he is now, I hope he knows his courage wasn't wasted. This case stands as one of the most repulsive examples of human greed, vanity, and pure evil you'll ever hear. Never forget the names Debra, Samantha, and Joshua Edwards. And never underestimate how far some empty, soulless people will go just to feel important for 5 pathetic minutes.